Belum.
Hello, can everyone hear me? All right. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and welcome everyone to the grand final, and congratulations to the teams who make it to the grand final. So before we start, as usual, I'm just going to give like a brief rules before we start debating. My name is Imban. I will be the chair for this round. And judging with me is Akila Latif and Aiman. So, as usual, each speakers can only speak for 7 minutes. And if you want to ask POI, you can only ask POI in the first after the first minute of each speech, and at the end of like 6 minutes. After 6 minutes, you can't no longer ask POI. It will be preferred if you can ask POI either to chat box, or you can turn on your camera and you just give a signal that you want to ask POI. It's preferred that you do not interrupt the speakers while they're speaking by giving a verbal POI, unless the speakers say otherwise and they say that they're okay with verbal POI. All right. So I guess without further ado, we can start with the grand final on the motion that this house would resign from the hospital. I would gladly invite the Prime Minister to open the debate. Here, here.
This house would resign from the hospital, and as the side government, we have never been prouder to propose. So before we go on to the substantial parts of the debate, let me clarify on the main key in today's motion, which is the word resigned. So as a medical officer, as a lung specialist to be precise, I would resign from the hospital, but not entirely. I will quit from direct involvement in hospitals and handling patients, though I am able to contribute to the medical department of India through being a medical analyst, where this scope of jobs means that I am able to analyze patients and help more doctors while I am working from home. So, as the government today, we have two burdens of proof that we want to show to the members of the hall today. The first burden of proof is how, number one, prevention is better than cure for me, my family, and for the community around me. Number two, we want to prove to you on how, by resigning, it would be an act of rebellion against discriminative people that discriminates between the poor and the rich. Now, moving on to my substantial part of the debate, which is my argument. My argument starts with the keyword of how I could still save the people even though I resigned from being at the hospital physically. All right. So how am I able to save people? Is that as I have said before, I would be working as a medical advisor or a medical analyst that still helps people or the doctors to treat and analyze their patients by working from home. Yeah. One more fact that I would like to introduce into this debate is on how the government of India has called upon final year medical students in order to help the already available doctors in the public hospitals in India. So you may argue that the numbers of final medical year students still would not suffice. Yes, they would still would not suffice, but at least I, as a lung specialist, could monitor them and could still show them and give them my knowledge and also what I am capable to do through being an medical analyst. So that is why I believe even if I resign from the hospital physically, I am still be able to help the people of India. So that's the first level of analysis of what happens if I resign. Second level of an analysis is what happens to me and my family. If I were to resign physically, I would be able to save my family and myself from COVID-19. Why? Because the statistics of India shows that up to 400 doctors have been infected by the COVID-19 virus after the second wave of the pandemic in India earlier this February. So why it is important for me to keep my family safe is that since India is a country where it is very packed. If I were to be contracted by COVID-19 at work, then I will bring those virus to my family, and my family would bring those virus to the people around us, to our neighborhoods, to our community, and this would not help India at all. We want to decrease the numbers of people who are getting infected. We want to decrease the number of people who die because of COVID-19. And this is why we want, uh, I want to, uh, I want to keep myself and my family safe from this COVID virus because we do not want it getting higher. The worse it gets for the doctors, the worse it gets for India. Third level of analysis. Why do I speak as if I am? Why do I speak as if I am the one eligible to resign? Why not anyone else? A fair trial is that I am, like I said before, I am a lung specialist. Where in India we have less than 3,000 of us, and when we have less than 3,000 of a very special part, a very special type of doctors, which is lung specialists, what happens if we lose even one of them? We have thousands and millions. We have 5.7 millions of general doctors, but only 3,000 lung specialists in the whole India. Can you imagine if there is so much COVID-19 patients that have infected their lungs, then the 3,000 could not help. At least if I resign and work as a medical advisor, I could I could at least help these, like I said before, the first year medical students, and give my knowledge to them, not only one but more than a class of them. At least they are there physically in order to help these people who are contracted by the COVID-19 virus. The opposition could argue, like, uh, are their life worth less than mine? And this is my response: no, their lives are not worth less than mine. But if they were to die, then India would lose one doctor from 5.7 million doctors in the whole India. But if I were to die because of COVID-19 virus, means that would the whole India would lose one doctor from only 3,000 of these people. Before that, yes, POI.
All right. Even if on your side you say that yes, you may not be working directly with the hospital, but how are you sure that this lung specialist will be formally obligated to even attend his or her duties, being as a lung specialist at the hospital itself?
Because it is stated under the government that I still need to work as a medical advisor, because that is what a medical advisor do. He still serves the community by working at the government, except he works from home. Okay. And one more thing before I wrap it up, before you guys accuse me of before you guys accuse me of not having a moral code or breaking my oath as a doctor, let me clarify that the Minister of Health and Family Welfare of India has already warned the people that the Indian government has not overcome the COVID-19 pandemic yet. Yet they themselves went to the Ganges River in order for them to celebrate a religious gathering, which, in my opinion, they cannot talk about moral ethics if they are themselves who exposes them to this virus, who exposes themselves to the dangers and forces people to broke their own moral ethics, who broke their own moral codes. So this is why I believe, even if I resign, I would still help the nation in certain ways. So with that, I rest my case.
Thank you so much for the speech, Prime Minister. To any other person who not speaking, who not supposed to be speaking, please mute yourself. All right, thank you. Now to continue the debate, let's invite Leader of Opposition. Here. Other person, please mute yourself. And Orcom, I'm not sure whether you can too, but like if you can just mute anyone who not supposed to be speaking. All right, Leader of Opposition. Here.
Am I audible?
Yep. Yes, you are.
Okay. All right. I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, every day, each day, the case of the COVID case in India is rising, and also the death toll. And now you're saying that by resigning, you can also do more good than harm. But in my we as the opposition thinks that by continue working, you are actually helping people. Okay, so let me elaborate a little bit. I'll be rebutting a few points. You are saying that you can work as a medical advisor if you resign. That is true, but hear me. You are a lung specialist. You are working in a hospital. You are specialized lungs to work to help treat the lung. So your field of profession uh, is entirely suitable to help the patients of COVID-19. Let's say if there is complications in the lungs of a patient during the COVID-19. Complications here defines that there is something that is troubling the lungs that other doctors might not have noticed or know what to do, but a lung specialist is uh, is trained to fix the patients. Now, let's say if you resign, then by doing that, you are essentially uh, you are essentially not doing what your life has what you spend your entire life learning, because being a specialist in a medical field is not easy, because the whole point you learn lung specialist to help the thing about treat the lungs. Now the COVID 19 death toll is high, and if you resign, it's going to be higher. It is true that you can be a medical advisor and uh, help the people, but that is actually the point is everyone knows that you have to wear a mask to help prevent the spread of COVID-19, but they does not do it. So being an advisor, everybody knows what's do, but they don't want to do what they are going to told to do. So it's better to be a doctor and helping those that are infected.
POI.
I'm sorry, I'm taking sure. Okay. Now, the mechanism that the opposition propose here is that the lung specialist, I retreat from the front line and work as a support staff, e.g. in medical advisor. But it depends. If you we I won't resign, but if the situation is getting dire, we can retreat momentarily from the front line and work as a support staff, but not resign from the hospital entirely. He will contribute directly, if not indirectly. My deputy leader of opposition will later elaborate on this point.
POI.
Okay.
Right. So you mentioned how if you were to resign, right, you wouldn't resign fully and continue on working. Now, first, doesn't this actually go against the motion? Because it didn't say that you can resign halfway. It says that you are supposed to resign as a doctor. So, yeah, mind explaining that?
It's not entirely resigning, so it's not technically resigning. So the thing is, you're not resigning. You're just backing, take a step back for a few moments and then return later on. Okay. Resignation here implies that we quit those. I, as lung specialist, quit from the hospital, but that's not what the opposition is trying to do. Okay, now continue on with the mechanism. After a period of time, there will be less risk for us as the for me as the lung advisor, lung specialist. The burden of proof here is that handling COVID-19 case in India is not an easy task, as the people there there's a lot of people, and most people are either unhygienic or less educated, or just don't care about their general well-being. So a doctor is in dire need. Better yet, a lung specialist. And if you resign, it'd be a bad. You will put a more burden on the hospital staff. For example, the nurse and the, other doctors won't doesn't know what to do if there is a complication that is happening to a patient. Now, my argument here is that 1,000 life is better than one life. So by sure you are endangering yourself, but if you follow the protocol properly, a hospital is generally a safe place for because the doctor are trained in medical, so they know what the do's and the don't in the hospital. Okay, all life are important, so those patients' life are dependent on you. As you said, you take a Hippocratic oath, so you have to adhere to it. And my DLO will later elaborate on this one. Okay, and now you're sacrificing yourself for the greater good. Compare that to the situation where you resign, there will be a massive loss of life. And sure, you are safe, but not you and your family are safe, but not the other peoples and their families. Okay. Now the good thing about not resigning here is that you can save more life. You can prolong. You can help them cure until the other researchers can figure out a vaccine. Okay. Also, you could help more people achieve a happy life. You can reduce the death case on India, and by less people dying, you can help a country recover more quickly. So the society does not collapse. All right. I happy to oppose.
Thank you so much for the speech, Leader of Opposition. To continue debate, let's invite Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
Okay. My debate start in 3, 2, 1. Action. Ladies and gentlemen, today I am going to rebut a point from our first speaker from a leader of opposition, and next I will move into my first argument. Okay. Before I start my debate, I am going to rebut some point from my previous speaker from leader opposition. Is that leader opposition just now said that 1,000 life is better than one life. I deny this statement because even though one life is not crucial like 1,000 life, but you must know that COVID-19 is a dangerous disease that easily can spread drastically. And the best thing is to settle this issue is we need to prevent it far away. And can you imagine if one, okay, like this, from day to day, one life is losing, and at the end, it will be more than 1,000 life at the end if we did not prevent this COVID-19. Okay, moving on to my first argument is that the burden proof of this debate is that resigning will be an act of rebellion against discriminative people. This is because by resigning, we can realize the Indian governments to do not force doctor to treat to rich people only. This is because as an ordinary humans, we are obligated to treat people equally without taking into the account their status, whether regardless to count there as a poor person or rather than rich person. Basically, discrimination brings the meaning of uh, the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people, especially on the grounds. How can you imagine uh, an integrity doctor should stay with those hospitals that treat their patient discriminative? I mean that treat only the rich people rather than poor people. I am sure if our parties will keep paying our status by integrity by just resigning for the hospital and move away from this issue. Another reason for we to resigning is because although we are paid with high salary by the hospital, but there is no such thing moral value like kindness, empathy, sympathy, and loving to be implemented only because we shall treat rich people more rather than poor. Okay, before I continue my argument, is there any POI? Okay, no, thank you. Okay, next. Our service is unjust only because we are forced by the governments to settle up COVID-19 disease for only rich guys, but not to poorness. For example, a doctor who apply the job at the hospital intentionally to treat people, but at the end, the doctor only allowed to treat the rich one. Can you imagine it's not a just actions to be taken to the doctor? And according to the Oxfam, top 10% of the Indian population hold 77% of national wealth. Look, is I help rich people, then he recover. Why the poor people, if I do not recover, then do the get better? Look at the slum of India. If it unjust because there are many poor people suffer COVID-19, which as I mentioned before, it has been split drastically. That's why that's why to reiterate, to sum up this issue, it's crucial for me to resign so that the government take this issue seriously and set up policy to ensure the doctor to able to perform their duty effectively without worrying of ever being housed. So by the risk. And in this case, I did not, our parties of government did not feel guilty to resign because it is our right to resign from being discriminative because yes, of course, we are doctor, we are doing the noble job, but if we are being discriminative to other people, there will be nothing and meaningless. Okay, before I end my speech, if there's any POI you want to ask? No? Thank you. With that, I end my speech.
Thank you so much for the speech, Deputy Prime Minister. Now to continue the debate, let's invite Deputy Leader of Opposition.
All right, am I audible?
Yep, yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Bearing the oath of the Hippocratic Oath itself, being a medical professional, a general practitioner, even in the frontliners in India, is a very burdening and hard task. However, on our side of the opposition, we believe that the lung specialist should not resign from the hospital on a few cause. Mr. Speaker, sir, I will explain to you 3 things from my speech today. First and foremost, my rebuttals on which I have heard from the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister. Secondly, my arguments on why I think and we believe that this House should not resign from the hospital. And last but not least, a comparative of why we win today's debate. All right, Mr. Speaker, sir, we asked you the reasoning behind this. That's basically a lot of pinpoints that actually want to question here. First and foremost, being the issue of resignation from the lung specialist himself, and secondly, the importances of actually him or her, the lung specialist, in attending to his or her duties at the hospital. All right, first and foremost, the Prime Minister issued an understanding of the person not being directly working with the hospital. The question imposed by us is that we believe that even if the required lung specialist is not literally working on the forefront and is working indirectly, such as being a medical officer, it does not mean that the lung specialist is formally obligated or has to actually follow the attentive of the jobs. Because working as a at the hospital means if you even do resign, people might not even take your advices or whatnot seriously. Being able to actually be on a board, actually, for example, in an advisory board, poses more serious implications that should be taken by the hospital management. On the point of being not entirely resigning from the hospital actually poses a lot of questions and pinpoints whether should it actually be taken to resignation or not. And that is why the importance of the person actually staying in the hospital is being brought forward by my Prime Minister, in which the person is not literally working on the frontliners, and thus I will explain my arguments later. And secondly, on the point of being unjust for the rich persons, yes, and also on that account, yes, we do believe that importances of life should be taken into consideration and that every life matter regardless of any wage. However, in that accord, being after this in my argument, I will further explain on how our mechanism actually works and actually can benefit on both the people having to be, for example, the lung specialist and also the people themselves in the hospitals taking into their treatment from COVID-19. All right, so my first argument is in relation to retreating from the frontliners and working as a supporting staff of the member. Being actually a supporting staff of the member can actually be in many forms, especially, and also on our side, we do adhere and also acknowledge to the point that the person doesn't actually necessarily has to work directly as a frontliner, for example, being attending to the people on COVID-19 cases in the intense ICU itself. But being able to actually not resign actually shows that the person is working very in a way still in contract with the hospital and has to formally attend to all his or her duties at the hospital. And from our point of view, being a consultant or medical advisor is the best choice while being bonded. But at the same time, the problem of understaffed issues at the hospital itself is still questionable on behalf of the government themselves, because even though they have this intakes of final year medical students on the board, doesn't necessarily mean that they have the correct or necessary experiences that should be taken into account. And that is why the importance of these lung specialists have to be on the fields of the hospitals themselves. And that is why, even though that they retreat, they are actually still in relation to actually give their own shifts, for example, for a certain period of time, not momentarily, for them to actually return back on ground to actually aid, if not the final year medical students, but also give help also in regards if they are actually in consent to it. Okay, before that, RPI.
If I decide not to resign, does that mean the understaffed problem is suddenly solved?
Yeah, that is what I told you on your side, that yes, understaffed is still a big problem. That is why when we do not resign, we can still have a shifting schedule, for example, let's say, and that accord actually helps if by consent the lung specialist wishes to return to the hospital or is under urgent circumstances, they will have to return to the hospital, which is why that is important for them to be formally obligated or formally bonded to the hospital. If not, then they have the opportunity whether not on to attend or not to attend to the hospital, and that is a very large problem imposed by the side of government themselves. That's why we want them to not resign, because the obligatory duties based on their own Hippocratic oaths, or for example their working salary or whatnot, is very important for them to actually achieve this important goal at the end of the day. All right, so as being a medical consultant actually improves many other benefits, providing a wider scope and also a larger overview on how to improve the management of the hospitals. And in regards to the problems between the rich guys, when you are formally obligated at a hospital, when, for example, a member of the advisory board giving serious analysis and also understandings of what repercussions that you have if, for example, understaffed problems or whatnot, actually being a member of the advisory board helps to actually give consult to for example, the management of the hospital to actually take into account other consideration on these matters. So we say, if you are formally obligated, then you have the right to actually issue whatever that, for example, that you think should be improvised in the management of the hospitals themselves. That's why, for example, in the case of people or rich VIPs, whatnot, they actually skip the lines or actually discriminate over other people. When the person has the overview, when given their knowledge and also experience, they can actually consult and give the consideration into actually deliberating into account the importances of making sure it is an equal treatment of every person, of every COVID-19 patient at the hospital themselves. That's why the medical advancements that they have, plus the knowledge and also the experiences, plus the information known by the lung specialist, helps to actually provide a more constructive and more comprehensive understanding on how to actually improve their management at the end of the day. All right, before I move on to my second argument, yes, another BOI.
What you said about the board advising the doctors of not being choosy of their patient is actually currently happening in the status quo, but we still see discrimination happening.
Yes, we do acknowledge that. Yes, that is very true. And that is why the importance of people being heard, the problem of them not actually being heard is because sometimes the issues of these are not being taken into account. And these are basically hospital management staff that are actually hospital management staff at the end of the day. They are not, for example, those who are literally on the frontliners working face to face with these people, facing large damaging risks of other people. And that's why we believe that being able to actually have the experience as a professional at the front line actually gives more importance for them to actually take this into account. And given that the opportunity that the person has, can actually issue on a larger and bigger stance and actually demanding from the hospital management themselves. Okay, moving on to my second argument. Morals on post-resignation, knowing that the lung specialist himself or herself is betraying the Hippocratic oath. And yes, as a medical officer, as a general practitioner, it's very important to actually attend to this oath, knowing that even though you are safe at home, working, for example, working from home, there's still the problem of understaffed management. And that's why we propose our mechanism in order to cater to that problem. And the feeling of guilt that that person has, knowing that the understaffed issues is caused by the person, is actually a large problem that the person have, and being able, even for example, resigning and working from home only will actually cause a large deterrent factor in, for example, the large cases. And even though he or she is working from home, the problem will still arise in the large number of cases and fatality ratios based on the statistics in India itself. And that is why the side of opposition is proud to oppose this motion and believes that the lung specialist should not resign from the hospital. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the speech. Deputy Leader of Opposition to continue, let's invite Government Whip. Here.
Hi, so first off, am I audible? Please give a thumbs up if I am. Yeah, okay, therefore, my speech will begin in 3, 2, 1. So good afternoon and greetings a bit to the judges, fellow timekeepers, and also members of the opposition. Now, today my speech will consist of 2 simple parts that will be very crucial in order to understand why our motion should be carried forward and should win this debate. So the first half, I'll be talking about how I'll be talking about the rebuttals that I'll be giving on that I'll be talking about Sorry. So first I'll be going about the rebuttals that I have to say about the opposition's team. And then second, I'll be further reaffirming the motion and the points given by my own side in order to prove to you all that our motion is the right one and therefore we shall win this debate. Now, first off, I acknowledged how there was a lot of things wrong with what the opposition leader said. So he realized that it's important for the medical advisor to it's important for us to take care of our health, but at the same time it's also important for us to cater to the patients. Now my prime minister has already addressed this issue. He proposed a solution that can cater to both of these problems. One is to protect the doctor's health as well as family's well-being, as well as to cater to the patients. Apparently, the Prime Minister already said that there have already been measures put in place in the hospitals, such as like SOP, the standards of procedures, as like wearing masks in the hospitals. And it's just that people aren't following them. Then isn't that exactly the thing that's isn't that exactly the issue here? And also, did he not hear how my Prime Minister already said, so far, 400 doctors have already been infected. So even with these SOPs in place and such policies that are supposed to help curb the infection onto doctors, right? It's not actually effective because doctors are still getting infected. And there's an analogy on how apparently 1,000 lives is better than one. It's true in most cases, but then again, we have to consider this one life we're talking about is the life of a lung specialist. Without this crucial lung specialist, of which there are only few thousands of in India, how do we accept to help mitigate the effects of COVID-19? I'll tell you how, by going along with our proposed motion and idea that was forwarded by my Prime Minister. Have an alternate job that actually still goes to try and help in dealing with the COVID patients, but not actually being there on site. And that is by being like some sort of medical advisor to help medical staff. And we do acknowledge that the medical staff inside hospitals are not enough to cater for everyone. And we do also acknowledge how there's not enough experience. There's not enough experience from these fresh graduates in order to treat the patients properly. So don't you think that not only these fresh graduates don't have enough experience, but then they're actually also forced to actually work in hospitals? How exactly are they supposed to properly deal with these patients if they don't have anyone to refer to, which is what we're trying to propose by resigning from the hospital and also becoming a medical advisor, so that we can help advise these fresh graduates on how to properly treat these medical, on how to treat these COVID patients. And then secondly, I want to move on to the Deputy Prime Minister's speech. So he said something along the lines of like, if you resign, what's the obligation that you're going to have in trying to help COVID-19 patients? Now, bear in mind, we are medical personnel. We are a type of doctor because we are lung specialists. We took that oath. We aren't, just because we leave the medical field doesn't mean that the kind of like morality will just leave us. It is an oath, and an oath is something that you take if you intend to stay by it. Therefore, and plus this is us we're talking about, we know what we're doing. we also want to try and help the patients that are suffering from COVID-19. But however, we also value our own life. And at the end of the day, isn't that what matters most? You have to protect and try and care for your own health first before going to others. Without us, who's going to help to cater for the COVID patients, of which the numbers are constantly rising every single day? We are a crucial component in the medical system in trying to combat the effects of COVID-19. And then also, they also apparently paint this picture on how staying and becoming a member, a panel, some sort of like panel of the board of the hospital would help to reduce the effects of discrimination. Now, let me tell you, in India, given how understaffed they are, given the influx of patients that are constantly coming to the hospitals day by day, do you think that is potentially something that they put as a priority to make sure that everyone gets fair treatment? Even if it is a priority, how exactly is it going to be enforced? Now, as properly mentioned and as properly developed by my Deputy Prime Minister earlier, we said that our burden of proof was to resign would be an act of defiance, or an act of rebellion to ensure that the government does something in order to stop these things from happening, of which none of the opposition members actually tried to address by leaving. Seeing as how we are a lung specialist and there are only a few thousand of us in the hospital, the government would notice and would also want to question what is the reasoning behind of us leaving. And with that, we can, in a way, make sure that the government are aware of the issues that are going on in the hospitals, and ensure that some sorts of guidelines and laws are put in place in order to avoid these kind of discriminations from taking place. And again, even if, let's say, or you can argue that COVID patients are, rich people, regardless of their status, are still COVID patients. But again, as explained by my Deputy Prime Minister, rich people of India make up a very small portion of the whole population. So you have to bear in mind that we have to cater towards everyone. And as of now, the majority of COVID patients are the poorer Indians. So therefore now, to sum it all up, my side of the government, right, we have proposed two very strong burden of proofs, of which only one has been slightly touched, and questionably so, in order to question the feasibility of it, whereas the other has seemed to totally gone over their heads, and the ideas given to try and fix this isn't really reasonable at all. And with that, I've never been prouder to propose. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the speech. Government Whip to continue the debate. Let's invite Opposition Whip here.
Am I audible?
Yep, yes you are.
Okay. Just to clarify something, I'm using two devices because my laptop's mic is not working. I'm the one who is raising my hand. Okay. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, the way I will structure my speech will be, I will divide my speech between 3 major clashes. The first clash will be which side cater to the COVID-19 patients more. The second clash will be which side cater to the doctors' well-being more. And the third very important clash will be in terms of morality. So the first clash, which side cater to the COVID-19 cases more? So Thai government have mentioned that these lung specialists will technically still have from home, right? And the reason for this is because he is a lung specialist, so we don't want the lung specialist to die because he is very valuable and such. But the thing is, when you work from home, you cannot do the things that a lung specialist do. Technically, you are useless. A lung specialist is useless if he or she works at home online. Like usually, lung specialists are there for like the very critical patients. That time he is more needed. And okay, so I understand. So technically, you mentioned he's now he will be a medical advisor and such. And that technically still not a lung specialist. So technically, in both sides, in your side still lost lung specialist. And I was like, okay, the lung specialist is still there, and maybe there is a chance that he will get COVID-19 or die. But your side, the lung specialist is gone, not there in hospital and cannot be a lung specialist. So I don't see why are you saying that we actually want to prevent the numbers of lung specialists from decreasing. So therefore, since on our side, the lung specialist is still at the hospital after mandatory retreat, he or she can actually cater more as a lung specialist on the hospital itself and help more COVID-19 patients. Okay, so the second clash will be which side cater to the doctor's well-being more. Okay, so as we have mentioned before, so these doctors, the problem that these doctors face is that he is overworked and such, and so that inside government, they prefer that the doctor should resign or work from home, right? And so on our side, we still do have a bit on the problem in terms of he retreats momentarily, like maybe if not directly but indirectly, and therefore he still have a period of time to actually regain his recover a bit of his mental well-being. Okay, and even if we do not cater to the doctor's well-being, I will be going to the third clash where in terms of morality. So as my Deputy Prime Minister has mentioned that, as my Deputy Leader of Opposition has mentioned, is that these lung specialists and medical workers have already taken an oath, and when they take the oath and when they actually decided to take this medical courses, they already know that their life will be extremely busy and have sacrificed a lot of time. And also, therefore, since they have taken the oath, is still their responsibility to actually cater to the oath. And so we also mentioned that we value every life as equal, and therefore 1,000 lives will obviously be more important than one life. And you may say that this sounds like we have less empathy towards the doctors themselves, right?
POI.
Yes, go ahead.
So are you saying that by taking the oath, that limits the importance of ourselves, the doctor, to cater to our own health?
I see. Okay. So here's the thing. So the people themselves, right, they are solely dependent on the doctor's action. Like they don't have any power to actually cure themselves. They are solely dependent on the doctor's decision. Like if the lung specialist suddenly decided to resign, then the people themselves don't have a say on his decision technically, because it's solely on the lung specialist decision. So therefore, the people will be more not fair lah, in terms like that, because their lives dependent on the doctor's action, so they cannot do anything on the doctor's action. And therefore, okay, also like I mentioned, they mentioned that we have less empathy towards the doctors, and that the reason because the people do not really follow the guidelines and all of that. But take note that the people who do not follow the guidelines are just a minority. The things that we see in news are just a minority. Yes, PI. Yeah.
The doctor's oath is where doctors save people. If doctors are in danger, thus they cannot save people, isn't that the oath breaking the oath?
Here's the thing, we do save the people because we are at the hospital, but in your side, they work at home, right? They cannot do the things that a lung specialist can do. Therefore, on your side, more people will contract and die from COVID-19 diseases. And so only a minority of the people are actually do not follow the guidelines. Because the thing is, everyone is trying their best to follow the guidelines and prevent from contracting COVID-19 infections. Okay, so the prevalence in inequality. Okay, so the thing is, even on your side, even if the doctor resign, the prevalence in inequality is still there. And also, I know that you mentioned that government will notice and actually take notice, and that this is the era of rebellions. But I don't think that the government will take notice because it's just one down specialist. Nothing will change. The inequality is still there, and so therefore it is not mutually exclusive. Therefore, I will end my speech. Happy to oppose.
Thank you so much for the speech, opposition whip. Now to conclude the whole opposition bench of the debate, let's invite op reply. Here.
Am I audible?
Yep, yes you are.
All right. Thank you. My reply speech will start in 3, 2, 1. What we see from today's debate is a very comprehensive discussion whether the lung specialist should resign, yes or no. And the problem that is being faced by both sides of today's debate is very, very minimal and cannot actually be put into account rather without the overview of what we see from both the opposition and also the proposition side, and also in which I also will give a review of the debate itself. All right, first and foremost, talking from the side of the government, they believe that they think the resignation, which is indirect on their side, will actually pose a better impact rather on actually not only to the people but also to the lung specialist himself. What on opposition side is that we actually prove to you a more a more holistical and also more practical method of which that is being bonded to the Hippocratic Oath or whatnot. On our side, we actually push to the ideology of actually being formally bonded to the hospital in order to push so that the lung specialist can be, if not a medical consultant, a medical advisor, or a member of the advisory board, but can still actually be contributing on a basis of actually on a sense and basis of actually being a part of the hospital staff. And actually, even though, yes, we do acknowledge to the concept of the Hippocratic Oath, but at the same time, not necessarily every doctor will actually follow that at the end of the day. And actually being a part of the hospital staff actually pushes the person to actually go further. And that is what side opposition has been pushing, so that the lung specialist will not actually resign. All right. So on the other side of the discussion of the debate, which is in regards to the unjust system of racial discrimination of between the VIPs, the rich, and also whether to give treatment on a status of basis. Yes, and also I think most of the discussions and has already been given by our whip, and also truly the matters of actually giving into account of whether it will be heard or not by the officials, and whether the treatment will still be equal and fair to all people will still not be determined unless the person specifically works for the hospital or actually gives a matter which is superiorly being taken into account by the management. And even on both sides, yes, we do acknowledge that DES can also give contributions on that matter, but at the end of the day, our side of the debate actually focuses more on to be heard by the management rather than to the other side of the debate today. And all in all, we can actually see from the debate that has actually been going back and forth from the discussion whether yes or not it will be actually working for the hospital, and whether the contribution should matter and should give it effect, if not individually to the lung specialist or also to the people on most matters. However, on this discussion, we actually believe on side opposition will bring a larger and better caterance towards the COVID-19 measures at the hospital, to the doctor's well-being, and also in terms of the morality. Because at the end of the day, we can see that on our side of opposition, we actually push on more realistic approach to actually being taken into account, knowing that we have obligatory and deterring factors that actually cause us to push for this debate. And for that, I am proud to oppose. And for that, we go forth in a debate that pushes in solving this matter on a more technical and practical approach. With that, stay safe, take care.
Thank you so much for the speech. Of reply, to conclude the government side of the debate, let's invite government reply. Here.
I'm just going to go this very simple. Two main points of the debate today. Number one, on does our resignation cost life, and number two, on how our resignation deals with discrimination that is happening in the hospital today. So we the government side have already tackled the first issue on how do we deal these COVID-19 patients, but which we already told you on how we would work as a medical analyst and how we would actually help these doctors that are already available and final year students that would actually help the COVID-19 patients in the hospital physically with us working from home. That is what we propose. What they propose is that the lung specialist simply still works, but they only work when they thought to be necessary, when they thought they are needed to be there. Thus, does not actually solve today's problem of the doctors being overworked and the hospitals being understaffed. Whereas in our paradigm, we already told you everything goes as normal, except we work from home by helping those who are at the hospital. Clash number two, on how we already told you by us working from home is act of rebellion, an act of making the government and also the board to realize on how bad the discrimination is actually happening in India. By us doing that, the people will actually see the bad brains of these discriminative people and thus move into a way that would stop these discrimination, will stop these segregation of social standards. But what they propose is that they propose to just sit down as a doctor, do what you do, and let the board of directors do what they do. What they advise is for the board director to advise these people to stop discriminating people, which is practically what is happening in the status quo today. But the problem is, like I've said before in the POI, is that this status quo still happens, and the discriminative also happens till this day. Now we look at the best case scenario and worst case scenario. The best case scenario for side opposition is that they work still at the hospital but rarely, and still is a high risk of them getting this COVID-19 virus. And number two, they do little to nothing on tackling the issue of discriminative and segregation of people based on their social standards. What we did, the worst case scenario that could happen to us is we sit home and we do not contract the virus because we do not have any risk by staying at home. We still help people by advising them and analyzing what would happen to the patient as a medical advisor and medical analyst. And furthermore, our resignation would actually be a start of a movement that would inspire and stop the discrimination that is happening between the two different standards of society in India. So that is why, with those best and worst case of scenario comparative, I believe that we have the best case and we should win this debate. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the speech, government reply, and thank you so much for the debate, everyone. Congratulations again for making to the grand final. And so since it's grand final, we're not going to announce the decision now. You can only know the decision who will be the winner in the closing ceremony. Again, thank you so much everyone for participating, and thank you so much also to the viewers or observers who are watching the debate. And I guess the outcome can carry on from here.
All right, thank you so much, Imran and all the debaters, for such a wonderful debate for our grand finals. As Imran has said previously, we will not be releasing the results anytime soon. So you can leave the call, but be sure to tune in into our YouTube live later at 9 p.m. And yeah, please do tune in because there will be best speaker prizes and you'll get to know the results for this debate. And yeah, there's a whole tentative plan for tonight's closing ceremony. So please be there. And again, and with that, it marks the end of Dean's Cup English Category 2021. Thank you so much for participating. We hope to see you again, maybe in degree, whenever. But yeah, thank you so much for participating. And we truly, sincerely apologize for any inconvenience or mishaps coming from our side. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, congratulations to both teams.
Congrats, Maxi.
You guys too.
You guys too.
That
It
was
was
a fun
fun.
debate.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
It's good.
Damn, the yellow is good, man.
No. They'll be like, oh, yeah. Oh, I did not
Yo,
see.
guys. Good luck.
Thank you,
Oh,
Loki.
Loki. My teachers, tiba.
I love people.
See you guys
Okay.
tonight. Bye bye.
Yeah, you guys too. Bye bye.
Bye, thanks.
Loki.
Yes.
Stand style for ajar dulu. InsyaAllah. Ajar
Apa?
sikit. Stand style sebab ajar dulu.